Yeah, we're looking forward to our next guest here, Allison. I'm sure many of you already know who Alison K is, but I'll take a moment to let you know she's known as everyone's favorite hyperactive web nerd. Her words, not mine. Alison K specializes in rebranding small businesses and nonprofit organizations. Uh, is your business maturing, but the branding still stuck in adolescence? Alison K combines 15 years of marketing, web, and design experience to help you glow up and propel into the next level of success. Probably one of the more interesting bios I've heard. Uh, but I'm not going to waste any more of Allison's time. I'm going to invite her to come on up here. I'm going to unmute her as well.
I'm approaching the
With
podium.
her,
I am walking up the
there we go.
stairs.
Here she
Oh
goes.
no, I've tripped, I've fallen, and my water dish went across the way. Water dish. Apparently I'm also a pet now. But my darlings, thank you so much for joining me today here on the old oh, look at that. We're getting a sneak peek of this before it's done. Here we go. Let's get back to our idol of Billy's of sorts. There we go. Okay. And we're going to make me tinier and tinier. So thank you all for joining me today. And do note, I live with parrots, and I have a female parrot who is currently laying eggs. So if you hear weird beeps and bops in the background, no, that is not my smoke detector. That is a bird making little baby birds. So let's talk a little bit about searching for yourself, right? What's going on when it comes to that linkage between SEO and branding, right? Might not be such an obvious thing. I really love how today's dovetailed really well when Mike was doing his audit and he touched upon branding, right? And we get this sense, and it is to some extent true with SEO, there's not a heck of a lot that you can do because a lot of branding kind of happens offline. People begin to recognize your brand, and then that pulls into questions that they're asking. But I do want to touch on some tips and tricks, maybe some trips too, if you get really deep and start thinking about it. What can we do from a branding perspective? And what does it mean in a larger scheme of things instead of just getting hung up specifically on very technical details? So it's not a very long presentation, but I want to talk about what it's like searching for yourself, very, very existential, and what that means for others. So the first thing I want to talk about is when I'm talking about branding, I'm not talking about your logo and your color palette and your messaging. I mean, that is part of it. But branding is so much more than that. And in fact, one of my favorite authors and speakers, Seth Godin, puts it really well when it comes to branding. And he says that every interaction in any form is branding. I think if you keep that in mind, as you start to understand the linkage between branding and SEO, this becomes a little bit easier to work with because that interaction, what your brand says, who you interact with the community is going to link right back into SEO in a way. So thinking about that, where can we start? Well, the first we can start with is doing a quick brand audit. In other words, making sure that you own the story and the messaging you're currently trying to put out. And it was really nice to see Mike do that earlier. I've broken this down a couple of steps so you can watch this video and understand where that's coming from. But the first is you want to search your company or your nonprofit name in the incognito or private tab, just to get the best of the ability that you're kind of seeing what you look like when you show up in those results. And then what you want to hope for is your own site towards the top. It should be, it ought to be, and if it is, you're already halfway there. But if it's not, then there's some work to be done, right? When we're speaking specifically about the name of your brand, you want to make sure that you are owning what's happening in those results to the best of your ability. And of course, you don't want to forget image and video search, not just the main SERP, in case that's of value to you. Perhaps you are a video production company, or you do a lot of work through Pinterest or recipes or photography in your business. Don't forget to have a little look around. They're a little harder to control, but just make sure that when you're searching in your name that you're coming up in a way that makes sense. And also that it's all congruent from what you can see. And of course, make sure you review your Google My Business content. I don't know what we're all going to do when Google decides to, if ever, start charging for Google My Business, because currently it is the best way for free to carve up the right-hand side of those search results, right? So you want to make sure you're reviewing your Google My Business content. And if it's up there, but you don't ever remember claiming your Google My Business, bloody well do it now. It's getting harder and harder for folk to come in and claim businesses that aren't their own because they keep improving their system. But if you see your website, your own business showing up in Google My Business, and you don't remember making it, then best for you to go ahead, claim that Google My Business and start owning that story, because that is such primo real estate for you to have. And of course, in looking at all of this, you got to ask the realistic questions. Is this information that we have up accurate? Because if not, I totally get it. You're noodling around on your website and you keep switching your taglines, you keep switching who you're working with from a demographic perspective. Make sure what you can control your own site results, that information is accurate and you're still telling the proper story. But also check out other websites to see if their information is accurate. If it's not, that could depend on a number of things. Perhaps you no longer offer a product that they don't realize you don't offer anymore. In the case of myself and the work I do, I work in particular with rebranding small businesses and nonprofits. So often once we do the rebrand, there could be a thing where they've actually changed their name completely. So we make sure post launch to reach out to all of these websites that have old information with the site and say, hey, is it okay if you just update? We used to be called Acme Co. and now we're called Bananas Incorporated. So could you go through your content for us, please? Thank you so much about Bananas Incorporated. And of course, do that to the best of your ability. And if there's a situation where there was bad PR that happened to your site, that's a much more delicate thing that I can't really get into. But I would recommend speaking with someone in the PR world to see if you can't spin up new content that more accurately reflects the culture and the messaging of your community today and your business. So in the case of mine, now I will admit this slide is from December when I originally was going to do this talk, but I got sick. So it's a little out of date, but here's a little screenshot of searching for Alison K Consulting and what shows up. So you can see at the top of the page, it is my own website, fantastic. And Google is forever noodling around with what it wants to show. So now it's showing about and rebrand consulting, which is actually great in my case. I've done a lot of work on that rebrand and consulting page from an SEO perspective because it's a service I want to highlight more. Because in my case, I was known for years as the WordPress guru. That's fine, but these days I really like to focus on rebranding and all the technical components that come with that. So that's working out in my favor. You can also see that Digital Nova Scotia and also Better Business Bureau and the CWB Directory Center for Women in Business are also coming up. So BBB, I'm actually no longer a member. I'm no longer a paying member, but I'm still coming up in results. So I wouldn't be able to update any information there, but certainly on Digital Nova Scotia and Center for Women in Business, if I have any updates that I want to go through and check that. And it looks like I'm going to have to do a little bit more of that for Digital Nova Scotia anyways to update some of that content. But again, this kind of relates back if you've ever heard about backlinking and the importance of being on useful directory listings. You never know what's going to show up here to the best of your ability. So it's great to be making sure that any listings you're a part of, you are telling your brand story to the best of the ability and the most current amount. And these last three here are sites I do not own, nor are they sites that I asked to be on necessarily, but they are sites that are written about me. So the first one is Amplify East, and it's a wonderful initiative. If you haven't checked it out, Amplify East basically shows that women are not a supply issue, and women and non-binary folk in Atlantic Canada are really wonderful to work with. So it's like profiles that highlights various entrepreneurs and owners across Nova Scotia who identify women or women X. And so that was written about me. So that comes out in the search. I'm happy with that because to me, that elevates my brand. I definitely am a bit of a bulldozer when it comes to where we're standing in the world of women in roles of work, entrepreneurship, and business owning. And then we have two other ones by counterparts of mine who have done work for me or part of testimonials. And originally, these said not too long ago, I branded in September of 2019, I was a Razor Header Design and I became Alison K Consulting. And these came up for such. So I emailed them and said, hey, thank you so much for showing me on your website. I've actually rebranded. Do you mind if you can't change some things? At least could you change the URL to link to my new website address and also update my company name, which is great. And then you can see here on the right-hand side, we keep harping about it, but damn it, isn't it important? Own your Google My Business and fill that thing, stuff it with all the important value that you want to have. So in my case, I made sure I've got pictures and I update my pictures. I made sure I got reviews, and you can get reviews by asking people who have written reviews on other platforms like LinkedIn or Yelp. You can just literally copy and paste that review into an email and literally email them and say, hey, we're doing some work on our Google My Business. Would you mind just placing your review here on my site for me? And you can also see at the bottom, back when I was doing this the first time, I made a Google My Business post. And a lot of us don't ever bother doing with this, but as you can see at the very bottom, you can see that I was going to be at SEO Brunch on December 21st. So again, I'm carving up more of a real estate. There might be some folk who were searching for me for whatever reason and didn't realize that I do speaking events. So again, that is adding to my brand story. So you want to make sure you can do everything humanly possible on that before you get started. So before I talk about Google Search Console, are there any questions in the chat? I don't have it coming up here that anyone wants to ask me in regards to that initial audit of what does your brand story look like? Maybe Kenzie, you just pop in and tell me yes or no.
No, they're not too inquisitive. It seems like they're just taking it all in.
Take it all in. I'm a tall, loud drink of water. Let's go, right? Okay. So the next thing would be Google Search Console, and this is where reality checks certainly can sink in. So we're on the stage now from what is being shown in the SERP when I know my name, and then we know our company name, into, well, what's actually happening in the world if maybe they don't necessarily know our company, but folk are searching for the solutions we offer, whether it's products we sell, the services we offer, or the mandates and change we want to make in the world. So what you can do, and again, this will depend on seasonality. It'll depend on the life cycle of your website and how much data you have put up on Google Search Console, but you can do a search and do a query for your brand name. In my case, I knew that I was still getting searches back from Eraser Header Design, and I wanted to open up a little bit to Alison because I wanted to show something in particular to you today. But you can see here that I've filtered down my queries around anything containing the word Alison. And so you want to have a look at this and see if things are jiving and kind of balance out how much of your traffic is branded and how much of it is non-branded. Often when I do rebranding work with clients, either it's very heavily skewed towards like searcher intent being they are trying to be solved a problem by the thing you offer or the service you provide, and there's not a lot of branding, or the other way goes and it's a lot of branding, which is great if you build a really large social media audience, if you're an influencer, if you're well known for who you are, but don't you want some of that traffic where people are asking you about your expertise and then learning about your brand and then from there on becoming dedicated customers? Absolutely. This could be an eye-opener. For mine, it turns out that I give Google Analytics talks and training, and it turns out that there is a company out of the UK called Alison, and it's sort of like lynna.com. And so for a while there, I kept getting sorts of queries showing up for Alison Google Analytics. And I got all excited until I realized, oh, okay, it's not actually for me, it's for something else. So this can be a great way for you to quickly understand how your company name exists in the entire world of search results for the branded. And then on the flip side, you want to go ahead and make sure you're checking out your non-branded queries to see if there's an area of improvement that maybe you want to work on those titles, those meta descriptions, or the content of your page if your goal of yours is trying to elevate your branding. So one thing you can look at here is inside of those queries, if you're seeing a lot of return for the, like maybe one of the key services you offer or the key product you sell, you might want to go, I think we're going to reevaluate a little bit our titles and our meta descriptions to see if maybe we need to include the name of our company, because or it maybe in that page, we're not ever saying who we are at all, short for this little tiny logo at the top, right? Or if a lot of your traffic comes through blog posts, often people are in a moment where they are trying to solve a very specific problem and they're reading the information, but they're not necessarily reading it specifically through your brand voice. They're in this mode of like, this is about the thing I need to solve. So it's going to be possible that you want to use this information from Google Search Console to go, well, is there a way that we might be able to very quickly introduce who we are as a brand so that people can actually distinguish us from all the other insight out there? And I know people are looking at this, and in case they're wondering, there's this weird total drop down on here. And because this is SEO Brunch, and I want to talk about this, in case you're wondering what in the hell happened, that was intentional. Back in 2016, I wrote 2 blog posts in regards to Toastmasters. And I'm no longer a Toastmaster. Wonderful thing. Totally join it if it's for you. But didn't those 2 damn posts run so much of my traffic forever and ever? And I tried every which way to get people into my funnel, onto my newsletter list, or even to get them just to move off of those pages, right? But it wasn't working. So in case you've got a couple of blog posts that have nothing to do with your business these days, and they still got traffic and you don't know what to do, still do your due diligence with auditing, how you might be able to improve that, but learn from me. I'm still here. I didn't catch on fire. My website's still standing. But in particular, just in this part when it came to Toastmasters, it did drop. So I know y'all got eagle eyeballs there and you're wondering what in the hell happened to her traffic. On purpose, I slowly and very sadly put those 2 blog posts on a pier, lit it on fire, and pushed it out to sea. So questions you want to ask about these Google Analytics results are, how do you feel about them? How you doing? Does it feel okay? This is what you were expecting. Are you full of glee, or are you slightly disappointed, right? And what does this tell you about search intent? Do you see things like your brand name and returns, right? Does that mean that a lot of people who know your brand are people who have already purchased it and are looking to return or to speak to your customer service, right? When I talk about search intent or searcher intent, it's understanding that SEO isn't necessarily just about keywords, but about what people are trying to do. What action are they trying to take? What kind of job needs to be done for them? And they're trying to find those information and answers on Google. And then I did my 2 screenshots on queries, but you could also switch those you can switch the way you're viewing Google Search Console to be more about pages. So you could reverse engineer this and go, okay, so we have a product, we have this widget, this amazing widget that we sell. Here it is. We have the best deodorant on the planet, right? And we know that people must really love our deodorant. But the thing is that most of our queries about this deodorant we sell isn't going to our product page. It's going to our frequently asked questions page. There needs to be some work done there, right? So maybe that page information could tell you what's happening with the brand. Are we not telling a bit of our brand story in our product? Are we not set up our product pages correctly? Something in our FAQ that we could also be answering on our product, so we get people to think and buy instead of to think and ask questions about, in that case, natural deodorant and all the wonderful things that come in with, organic products. And of course, as I mentioned from that Alison in the UK piece, do check your countries, because for me, it was really crestfallen to find out that Alison.com was a whole system that taught analytics and other things. So they weren't looking for me at all. So I didn't have to worry about that traffic in particular. And of course, don't forget about seasonality. When you're looking at this long haul information, make sure that you're being aware and you're being courteous to the fact that you may have seasonal traffic. Maybe you do business more in the spring and in the fall. Maybe it's year round, or maybe there was a new movie that came out that had a similar name to what you offer, and that, threw Google Trends up for a loop. So keep those things in mind. But again, it's a quick overview for you to understand not only what you hope to be saying, but to this point in time, how much of that does Google understand from a organic search intent? So are there any questions, Kenzie, about the Google Search Console searching?
Oh, nothing specific. We've got a question from Flora about she's having trouble accessing her data in the Google Search Console. We might sort that out in the Q&A portion.
Ooh, yeah, for sure.
Particular.
For sure. Yeah, it does sound particular. So we will do that. Floria, we'll get you back up and running because you got data. We want to look at that data. So next one's just a really quick tip. And that's about on-page branding. I know I started off here talking about how it doesn't really matter about your logo and color. I mean, obviously it does, but sometimes we get really anal about that. But I do want to talk a little bit about one aspect of the design of your website from a branding perspective that's going to make for better UI UX. We do know that when it comes to SEO, not only do you have to get folk to your site and that click through, but we want to make sure that they're encouraged to stay on your site and find it relevant, right? We don't want people coming and leaving because Google was like, well, I suppose that wasn't the best results to serve because people came and they left. And one reason why people can leave or come and leave is you don't really tell them what to do on your website once they digest the information they want. And the other thing is think about is you want to pass your SEO, your authority of any pages or posts that are doing really well. You want to pass that authority on to your other pages by making sure you link out to them. But a very common thing that I see happen with branding and UI UX is people get really stuck on their brand colors to the point where the UI and UX suffer. So in the case of my website, my brand colors are white and that cyan blue, right? But I make it crystal clear on my website that if you want to click something or if I want you to really read it, I make it this hyperactive pink. And that's really important inside of this design. So if you have a logo or a brand color scheme, perhaps you're an eco-friendly company and all of your colors are very soft and subdued, and talking, making people feel very calm, that is excellent. But I would encourage that your links and your buttons and your form pieces, anything where you are directly asking folk to communicate and to engage with your website, make it brighter. amp up that contrast. There's a great plugin or a great website called WebAIM, WEBAIM.org, and they have a contrast checker. You can actually post in the background color and the color of your links. It'll tell you if that contrast is meeting accessibility. And that's not just for people who have specific accessibility needs. I myself have a hard time with contrast. It's probably why I made my brand so friggin' bright. But just consider with your branding that your brand and what your designers have created is excellent, perhaps from a printed material standpoint or a feeling standpoint. But when it comes to websites, it's supposed to be an interactive tool set for your website or for your business. So make sure those elements are clickable. So Kenzie, my darling, any questions about UI, UX, and branding?
None so far, but I loved hearing about that webaim.org, so I dropped that link in the chat.
Thank you. Yes, I use it a lot. And here's a neat tip about webaim.org and or color. Your designer might give you like the hex value or the color value of your green. You can plop it into webaim.org to see how it's working. And they have a little slider where you can make it lighter or darker. And sometimes just changing the value of that will be ever so slight. I guarantee your designer will not go crazy about it, but you'll be able to make the legibility stronger. So do check that out. And let's just make the web easier to read. That's the bloody job of the thing, right? Okay. And the last thing I want to talk about is how backlinks equals authority equals community. So we're going back to that whole Seth Godin piece about every interaction is a brand moment, right? And we understand in Google in SEO that backlinks are critical. You need other websites to vouch for what you're talking about is true. Without that, then no matter how well you optimize your content, it's quite possible you're never going to meet the needs of websites who have a lot more authority of other websites saying, yes, they are the best deodorant company in town, in Canada, and you want to go and shop with them. So what can we do about thinking about branding and backlinks and authority from that perspective? First of all, like I mentioned, keep your listings up to date, right? Wherever you can herald your content, make sure you do so. Second one is be a guest on podcasts. When I do a lot of SEO audits for clients who are doing rebrands, some of them are starting out to having podcasts or considering it. One thing I've noticed in their competitor or their comrade spaces is that often people will search some of their top pages can actually be from podcasts where they had a certain guest on because people were being driven by that star power of that guest. So one of the best things you can do is if you are an expert in your field or you feel strongly about the movement that you're trying to bring to the world and herald, then try to be a guest on podcasts. There's a lot of work happening around there, a lot of transcripts and opportunities for you to get backlinks. And the other thing I want to say about podcasts is there's a huge difference between someone reading a blog post about what you think is important and them hearing about how you think it's important and about hearing how you interact with the host of the show about the thing that's important. You may have seen some of my content before, but now you're getting to hear me. And now, for one thing, you're never not going to hear my weird nasally voice, right, when I talk to you. But more importantly, I hope that you hear this energy that I have about it. So if you're thinking about being on podcasts, it is a fantastic way that it's not only going to build your backlinks, but also give people who may not know much about you or cold traffic to be like, who in the hell is this chick? I want to learn more about her. And of course, if you can, contribute to articles. Not all of the content that you create has to be yours. You could be incredibly helpful to reporters and writers who are trying to meet crazy deadlines as every website wants to produce more and more content. The one that I recommend is Hero, and that's Help a Reporter Out. You sign up for free, and what happens is 3 times a day, you are emailed a list of articles that folk are writing that need experts' opinions on, experts' little kind of pull nuggets for. So you get one like early in the morning, I think like around 6 a.m. here, and then like one at 1 and then one at 6 o'clock. And all you do is you read through the description and you hit this little link inside of it, and then you can go ahead and write to that reporter all the content that you need. And there's lots of fantastic YouTube videos that explain how to get the most out of Hero, but it does work. In my case, it worked in a weird way where it wasn't Hero specifically, but recently I was placed inside of, there's an article about me in the Chronicle Herald because I helped a reporter out. It was supposed to be a simple piece about this question, but by the time we had a conversation, we had a whole article set up. So contributing to articles is a great way to get them to backlink to your website and try to have that agreement with them as well. Make sure it's clear to you that if they're going to write it or you're going to be a guest post or a guest blog post, make sure you understand if you're going to get some benefit from those backlinks. And of course, speaking about backlinks, there's nothing wrong with rolling up your sleeves and going ahead for a wholesome backlink campaign. Those backlink campaigns, you've probably heard them before, is where you will figure out what piece of content on your site you already have that you want other websites to link to. You will do some sleuthing on Google to find out who might have resources with out-of-date information or you think might be really interested in the content you have. Again, lots of great articles in YouTube spaces out there about how to do backlink campaigns, but they do work. I do not want you to think that because people have had poor experiences with these, something I can offer with backlink campaigns: don't use a script. Make sure you do the research of who you want to reach out to and write a truly authentic email, and make sure that you're offering value to them. Not just, hey, I liked your article, please include my link, but make sure it happens. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I had a stellar backlink request sent to me, and it was about my UTM for traffic growth blog post. And this person outlined the parts they liked about it, and they had written a very specific blog post all about Google My Business posts. And I was so happy to include it because the whole point of my article was to help people do more with their business online. And I'd be remiss if I didn't place that back link in. And I encourage you all that when you get those emails, read through them because there might be some gold in there. Someone might be offering something that's going to help you look like you really know what you're talking about. And the last one I want to talk about is SparkToro. If you have not heard about this thing, I'm in mega love. I have the biggest fan crush on this platform, and I love it. So you can use SparkToro to find like-minded audiences, especially in a rebrand situation. You may find that you need to kind of pivot the audience you're talking to, and you need to talk to a new one. And no one wants to sit there and try to grow an audience from scratch, and you don't have to. Instead, with something like SparkToro, what you can do is you can do research on a topic, and it will give you hashtags people use, the top social media accounts they're talking to, podcasts they listen to, and websites they visit. It's pretty incredible. So it is free right now, and for the free version, you get 10 searches a month, which reset every month. And the only kind of sticky part is it won't show you all the results, and you can't export what you're looking at, so you just screenshot it, right? So in this case, I'm going to use a very basic expression of SparkToro here. I have my audience frequently talks about rebranding. So I type that in, and I get all kinds of information about the audience insight, what social accounts they're watching, hidden gems, which is a great one to look at because those can be websites that don't have as much traffic, but they're kind of coming up on the cusp and you want to talk to them. But in particular, in the audience here, it tells me frequently used words in their shares and content. It shows me the hashtags they use. So if Instagram is a big part of your growing your brand business, you need to get SparkToro. Political social following, all kinds of amazing things about it, and their demographics that can be great and used for that. So SparkToro, check it out. It's free. It's a great way for you to understand the audience that other folk have, and then you can go ahead and begin to follow them. You can reverse engineer the content they're creating and go, oh yeah, I have a blog post similar to that. You can also start reaching out to that audience so they can begin to understand the name and the nature and the messaging of your brand. So hot and heavy, I'm all done, my darlings. Thank you so much for your time. I do want to let you know that I'm beginning a series of mini SEO workshops. Not sure when the next one will be, but if you're interested, please sign up for the wait list at mini workshops. You can scan that QR code and join me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, I will see you out in the Twitterverse. Thank you so much. Mwah, 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 mwah. So thank you. So any other questions about branding? I love it. It's a strange space, wonderful space, scary space, but important space.